His wife was that right there. That was his right She took his seat for the longest time.
I keep just bringing my hat up all the time. And they actually stay dry.
I noticed how white everybody was up there.
Well, see.
That may be because there was something I looked at online.
I know. I went to the silver. Email me.
I want to hear that experience.
Everyone going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. Please rise for salute to the flag.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please be seated. Okay, both of the citizens to be heard items are not on the agenda, so we'll put that to the end of the meeting. We're going to start with Township Solicitor Ms. Camp.
The first item is a motion to consider granting preliminary final land development approval for Chester County Intermediate Unit. This is property that's actually owned, the name of the owner of the property is Chester County School Authority. Property is at 1525 East Lincoln Highway. It's 17.8 acres located in the institutional district. Applicant seeks to replace a dilapidated greenhouse and construct a new 7,684 square foot horticultural building, 10 new off-street parking spaces, and garage facilities. They filed preliminary/final land development plans prepared by T&M Associates. They were dated March 8, 2019. They came to your Planning Commission meetings on April 16th. The Planning Commission recommended the board grant preliminary/final land development approval and to grant 2 waivers that were dealing with subdivision land development, stormwater management provisions. I prepared a draft decision that I circulated to the board. The decision would grant the preliminary final land development approval, subject to many, there are 12 conditions, many of which are boilerplate that are pretty standard in all the approvals. The first one is that it must comply with all terms and provisions of zoning, subdivision land development, and stormwater, unless waivers are granted through this decision. Applicant must comply with any outstanding comments in the Township Consultant's review letters. The last review letters were issued by Arrow, dated April 9th, and Gilmore and Associates, also April 9th. I'm sorry. Gilmore's was April 5th, and Arrow's was April 9th. So if there's any outstanding comments in those letters, the applicant would have to prove compliance with those outstanding comments. The draft decision grants waiver to allow preliminary and final together. It grants stormwater management waivers to allow pipe slope of 0.5%, and storm drain pipes to have less than a 2-foot minimum drop from the inlet structure to the outlet pipe. Those are technical things that Brian can speak to more if you're interested. They have to enter development agreements, financial security agreements. They have to pay all outstanding fees. They must secure all regulatory permits. The only other permit they're going to need is the planning module exemption from DEP. There will be no additional sewer facilities as a result of this building. And obviously an adequacy letter from the Conservation District. They're not disturbing more than the neighbor, so they do not need an NPDES permit. This is a very minor scope. They're basically removing an older greenhouse and replacing it with a newer greenhouse. And the rest of the conditions are all the boilerplate ones in terms of the number of plans we need for recording. So that is a draft decision. I don't know if Brian has anything to add. It was a fairly minor development, and again, it's really replacing out an old building with a new building for the purposes of an educational use.
Do you want to explain those two technical
Sure,
conditions?
I can explain the two waivers for stormwater. The first waiver is to allow a pipe slope of 0.5%, which is a standard engineering practice for minimum pipe slope. Township ordinance requires 1%. In this case, this pipe slope is for an existing pipe they want to replace with a new pipe in some place to upgrade the condition of the pipe. But the existing pipe is at 0.5%. They cannot gain the percentage because of the site conditions. Second part of that same waiver, this is all from section 135.311C of the ordinance, is the minimum diameter of pipe in the ordinance required to be 12 inches. If you connect pipes underground from the building roof drain system, they're considered by the ordinance part of the stormwater system. And 12-inch pipe is very large to be running around the foundation of a building this size. You don't need a pipe size that big. And the third one was the minimum cover on pipe. They are proposing to use reinforced concrete pipe, so that way they can, and it's a certain class, there's different classes of pipe, so the class of pipe will allow less of cover than the ordinance requires. And it's an area where there's no traffic, it's in a grass area, so there's no issue with that. That's the first request for relief for stormwater. The second relief is the ordinance requires to have 2-inch drop between the inflow pipe and the outflow pipe in a stormwater structure. The existing pipe they're replacing is a solid pipe with no.
I said 2 feet, 2 inches, I apologize.
Yes. It's a 2-inch drop from the inflow pipe to the outflow pipe, so it would allow the existing pipe they're replacing, they're putting a junction box where they're cutting the pipe out so they can connect to the old existing pipe and put the new pipe there for connection. It's better for construction, it's better for being watertight, but they cannot achieve 2 inches because of the slope of the existing pipe. So those are the two waivers being requested. Our office has reviewed it, and we have no objections to those two waiver requests.
Does anybody have any other questions for Mr. Kulakowski on this proposed project?
We seem to have to waive that a lot. It's maybe something that we go back and change the ordinance.
It could be considered, yes. It's very cumbersome for design in a site that's flat, because you have you're constrained by the natural site, and you start getting too deep, you can't tie into systems that are already in place and speeds around them. So this is one of the few ordinances I've seen that requires a minimum slope in the ordinance. Typically, it's left up to the prove through the calculations of design making the pipe and schedule its work.
Maybe we should look at that.
Is anyone from the applicant here?
Yes.
Okay, so I don't know if you have questions specifically for the applicant or.
Do you have any questions on this? I'll entertain a motion to approve the preliminary final land development for the Chester County Intermediate Unit new horticultural building. Motion made by Commissioner Chambers, seconded by Commissioner Tindaro. Any further comments or questions? Okay. Oh, Mr. DeSario, can you come up to the podium? Yeah. And remember, please state your name and your address for the record when you come to the podium.
Tony DeSario, 251 Loomis Avenue, Callan. I just want to know 0.5% how many feet?
How many feet is the pipe? Do you know?
Yeah, 130 feet.
0.5%, 130 feet?
Yes.
Just curious. That's a lot, not much fall.
standard pipe in streets for sanitary sewer is typically put in at 0.5%. It's a standard engineering rough
130 feet though?
in 300 to 400 feet at times. So that's, so 0.5%, it's a 36
It's a
inch.
large diameter.
It's a 36 inch diameter pipe. So,
I just wanted to know this.
yes.
All right, thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? It passes 4-0.
The second thing under my report, or my name, is we received a request on Monday this past week from an applicant, Two Farms Incorporated, doing business as Royal Farms. They are attempting to bring a liquor license to the store at 5031 Horseshoe Pike. The license in question is from another municipality, and they would require the board's approval under the liquor code, specifically section 4-461B3, for an intermunicipal transfer. The board has held these hearings before. Under the liquor code, the township board is required to hold a hearing within 45 days of the receipt of the application or there is a deemed approval. So the request tonight is not to discuss the merits of the application, but simply to schedule the hearing. I had spoken with the manager and we had discussed having June 13th be the hearing date as part of your regular meeting. That would be within the 45-day time frame, if that's acceptable to the board. I don't necessarily think we need a motion other than just the acknowledgement of the board. There will be at least 3 people from the board here at the June 13th meeting, and we can go and conduct the hearing. It does have to be publicly advertised. There will be a court reporter, and the applicant will come and present their case. There's quite a bit of established case law. If you recall the last 2 applications that we had, I told you there were some pending cases in the appellate court system. The appellate courts have decided those cases, so I will update my memorandum to the board and advise you of what the current state of the law is with respect to intermunicipal transfers of liquor licenses.
Are these going to be held at 6 o'clock, or do you know the time yet?
It's up to you. I mean, I think it can be done as part of your regular meeting. It's completely up to you if you want to do it at 7 or
Say
do it at 7:30. Do 7.
7.
Okay, I can attend. Everybody else can be under. Okay.
I think I am.
So 6:13 at 7 p.m.
6:13, 7 p.m. Hearing to hold a request for an intermunicipal transfer of a liquor license to the Royal Farms convenience store. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, anything else, Ms. Camp?
That's it.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Camp, would you like to discuss the Del Valle loan at this point in the agenda? Or?
We can do that now. I know that Helen Espenshade is here. Their firm represents the municipal authority. Lucian Calhoun is here. He is part of the financing team, and Chuck Wilson has been working with him. So as you recall at the last meeting, the municipal authority has a project to build a pump station and force main. And the municipal authority is getting a bond, or issuing a bond to do that. And in order to obtain the bond, the Township Board of Commissioners needs to execute a guarantee. So basically, you're pledging the full faith and credit of your tax dollars in the event the municipal authority is unable to pay the bond through the sewer revenues. Obviously, that's not a concern, but it's something that is required. So I'm going to let Helen or Lucian, if you want to jump in at all. It's a $2,800,000 loan or bond issue. Is that correct? Okay.
The financing is a direct placement of a note to the Delaware Valley Regional Finance Authority. We expect that the note will be at a fixed rate with an option after 10 years. If we were fixing the note today, the interest rate would be approximately 2.5%. Market conditions are very favorable at this time. It's interest rates are as low as they've been, or near the lows of the past year, and it's certainly very attractive historically. The guarantees of the township is a requirement of the Del Valle indenture. We can only lend to entities that are secured by the pledge of full faith, credit, and taxing power of the local government unit. And the ordinance before you tonight would authorize executing the guarantee agreement. It would approve the project that's being undertaken by the municipal authority, and it would authorize and direct the actions necessary to be taken under the Local Government Unit Debt Act to execute this guarantee agreement, which is constructively lease rental debt under the Local Government Unit Debt Act. It authorizes an advertisement of enactment if the ordinance is enacted, and then it authorizes the officers to do whatever is required, to permit the closing of the authority's financing.
My partner, Steve McGuire, does a lot of bond transactional work and loan work and has reviewed all the documentation that has been prepared and has had made a few suggestions for edits, and those edits have been made. As Helen has been saying on behalf of the municipal authority, he's also reviewed the documentation and I think is comfortable with everything that's going forward.
So is this a fixed rate or is it a floating rate?
It's the authorization is as a floating rate, but as is required under the Local Government Unit Debt Act. Under the loan agreement, the authority has the option, even if it fixes the rate prior to closing, at any time after that, it could request that that rate be terminated and converted to a variable rate. So under the Debt Act, the authorization of both the authority and the township is at the maximum possible interest rate, which is 15%. The conversion to a fixed rate is accomplished by a request from the authority. Then Bell execution interest rate swap transaction provide that fixed rate.
So when are you anticipating the fixed, if they do that at fixed rate at?
Well, if it were done today, it'd be at 2.5%. And as soon as, any time after the enactment of this ordinance and the time that the authorities comfortable in choosing a closing date, the interest rate can be fixed. It can be fixed at whatever the market rate is on that day.
Okay. Is the authority, are you going to convert it to a fixed rate or let it close?
Oh, the intent was to fix it.
Okay. But for the ordinance, you have to do it under the maximum interest rate.
That was the case also for the authority's resolution.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions on this?
So you're actually adopting the ordinance.
Right. Okay. I'll entertain a motion to adopt the ordinance guarantee agreement for the Township Municipal Authority pump station project.
So go. Second.
Motion made by Commissioner Chambers, seconded by Commissioner Young. Any further comments or questions from the board? Any comments or questions from the floor? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Oh.
They would like a roll call vote.
Oh, okay. Okay. Commissioner Tindaro.
Aye.
Commissioner Chambers.
Aye.
Commissioner Young.
Aye.
And Commissioner Breton. Aye. Okay.
Good.
So then 4-0.
Thank you guys for coming. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Anything else, Ms. Kim?
No, I don't know.
No, I don't.
Okay. You want me to stick around?
I think we're okay.
Okay.
Okay,
I'll read the documents for you to sign.
thank you. Mr. Kolakowski.
Good evening. A couple updates for the planning commission meeting, which is scheduled for the, sorry, I have the resolution up in here. Planning commission meeting, which will be held on the 21st of May. We have a couple items on the agenda for discussion and presentation to the planning commission. The first of which will be the draft capital plan from civil engineering will be discussed with the planning commission that night. Second item will be the proposed sign.
Yeah.
May 21st is
That's-
election day. and we
Yeah, this will be,
may
this
want to
room will be used.
Consider changing the date.
I thought already they changed it to the 14th.
This room will be.
We'll double check on
We'll
that.
double check on that. So, the next planning commission meeting will be discuss the township, the draft capital improvements plan, the proposed amendments to the sign ordinance to be discussed for a workshop with the planning commission, as well as the wireless, the DAS wireless 5G ordinance to be discussed. We're discussing that night. There's currently no applicant coming. There's no new project or applicant coming for the board for consideration, planning commission for consideration that night. The bid for the 2019 road program right now is currently scheduled to be put up on PennBid on Monday. It'll go live on Monday, so we're wrapping that up. It'll be finished tomorrow and published for people to be able to see it on Monday. That's what I have for the planning commission update. For Lloyd Avenue Bridge review, tonight I'm here to discuss it with the board and answer some questions and talk to you. I have Al Federico, Council Traffic Engineer, and he also has with him Paul Lutz from PennDOT to discuss any of the questions and discuss the actual procedure of what we have to go through in order to look at putting a signal at that bridge.
Okay, hi, thank you.
Hi, good evening. Thank you, Brian. So several meetings ago, the board asked that I look at the Lloyd Avenue Bridge and evaluate the potential for signalization. As part of that, we reviewed available traffic data, coordinated with police and EMS about collision data and calls, completed some field observations, and then performed preliminary analysis, which then led to coordination with PennDOT. A little bit of background, you may know most of this already. This is a county bridge. It is just under 18 feet, which is why per federal standards it is designated as a one-lane bridge. For the county records, the yield signs that are out there now were installed in 2003 as part of a land development application. Before that, it was just signed as a one-lane bridge without yield signs. And the municipal boundary runs through that area, and Downingtown has the pump station on the southeast quadrant of the bridge. So the county does traffic counts for their bridges every 2 years. So they were able to provide us with traffic count data from April of 2018. Also looked at some of the traffic count data that was available for some recent developments. Mostly that was intersection count data up at Manor Avenue. The county data seemed a little more proximate and reasonable to look at. So that was showing that the peak was occurring in the morning, a bit over 500 vehicles an hour during the peak. That was total of both directions. The collision data, there really wasn't any. No one is really aware of there actually being any crashes. There's a lot of talk about, close calls, but there does not seem to be any documentation or documented incidences that people are actually colliding at this location. The field observations, I think they confirmed a lot of what everybody knows. It's interesting that the speed limits are they're different on both sides of the bridge. The observed vehicle speeds were consistent with what you'd expect. They're, 85th mile an hour is a few over the speed limit on both sides. Nothing that would seem out of the ordinary. And clearly you have the sight distance limitations on the bridge, not just because of the curvature of the bridge, but the crest of the bridge creates a blind spot for vehicles that are coming north, that as a vehicle approaches the bridge coming out of the borough, vehicles on the other side may lose them briefly. So you don't have a continuous sight distance even when you get around the curve. So looking at all these factors, ran what I would consider a modified signal warrant analysis when we do signal warrants. You're looking primarily at vehicle conflicts and sort of applying your typical standards to the bridge. While there may be congestion caused by it, it really didn't meet the conflict standards that would typically lead you to go for signalization. However, PennDOT's traffic engineering manual includes some language that says a one-lane bridge can be signalized. You may want to consider signalization if there's exceptionally heavy traffic. So that's a very subjective standard. And that was about the point where I reached out to Paul at PennDOT, because even though the municipality would own the signal, PennDOT has review and approval authority, and they would be required to, for lack of a better term, concur with the determination that a signal should be installed there. So I wanted to get Paul's temperature on what he thought the prospect for signalization was. Paul, as you may or may not know, very familiar with this location, lives very close to this area. And Paul thought that this was a good candidate for signalization, potentially, and if it were to be signalized, he was confident that it would help ease some of the congestion that's seen in the peak period. So that's kind of the short version of where we got to. We have, I think if the township were to pursue it, we've got indication from PennDOT that they would be supportive. High level of confidence that in the areas when it's the busiest, it would help reduce the queues that you've seen. As with anything, there's always the potential flip side. You have now a situation where you really don't have any documented safety issues. If you're going to change the traffic control, you may introduce something that you're not seeing now just because you're making that change. There's also the potential that if you ease that congestion, and as we were talking about this, right now there's certain people in the area that are going to avoid this street because they know it gets busy. I would think it likely you'll probably be increasing the volume of traffic that would use Lloyd Avenue, if you remove that. And then also there's the cost. Installing and maintaining a traffic signal would be an upfront and ongoing cost that clearly you're not incurring with the yield signs.
Could it have an adverse effect where it backs up traffic even more?
It could if it's not timed properly. And again, Paul, relying on his experience with some of the one-lane bridges and just going through this over in Tredyffrin, again, Paul has a high level of confidence that it could be timed to address that. There are some things that would still need to be looked at in the details because you have the always stop sign at Pennsylvania just south. You have some throughput constraints already. And we need to determine this, if you were to proceed with this, we need to work with Ryan because the signal poles would most likely be in the wetlands. So we'd have to verify where we could install and make sure that everything's designed appropriately for what's probably not great soil. But Paul has also, on PennDOT's behalf, indicated that he could use one of his open-end contracts to do the design. So the process in that case would be the township would need to get a survey, provide the survey to PennDOT. PennDOT would do the operational design, and there would probably need to be some township involvement as we coordinate with the county. We want to coordinate with Downingtown because most likely we need an easement from Downingtown for the installation on the south side. So we probably want to have the solicitor involved to help work out that easement. Matter of fact, I guarantee you we've got the solicitor involved to negotiate the easement with Downingtown. And then after the design is done, PennDOT would turn it over to the township. The township would then be responsible for the bidding and construction.
What's the timetable on that?
If this whole thing, from when you said go, barring anything unforeseen, 9 to 12 months by the time each of these pieces is put in place and moved along. You know, it's a lot of little steps, and that presumes that, you know, Brian doesn't run anything in extreme with the conservation district, or there's no objection from down in town, or you know, PICO doesn't, because we'd probably want to attach to the utility poles to connect them. And some of the conversations with the county, they're a little hesitant to allow attachments to the bridge, and just for sustainability, we may want an overhead connection to keep as much as we can out of potential floodway. So
I know we have to come up with a design first, but these types of lights, is there an approximate cost? How much it would cost?
I would say the planning level cost for this, and that there's still a few variables. The working number we've been saying is about, by the time the whole thing's done, 150,000, give or take. So one of the discussions again with Paul is that there's the potential for grant funding. That you know, the Arley grant for the red light camera funds may be a good, this may be a good candidate for that. Again, if we progress this a little bit, that'll help refine the number. You know, again, because we're at this point, there are a lot of unknowns. You know, one of the things that just came up the last time we spoke about it is if you're going to have emergency preemption for the emergency services, you may need to actually, because of the curvature of the road, you may need to have another pole in advance up by Airwood. So, but you know, from a planning level, that's probably what we're talking about.
Any other questions at this point?
A couple questions. So what was the, I know you said it was the peak hours, what was the timing that you did this over the 500 cars?
So again, I obtained the traffic counts from the county. They had did counts over 3 days in April of 2018. The peak hours that they had, again, counted were the 7 to 8 o'clock. It was a little bit higher than the evening. The evening peak seemed to last a little longer, but the morning was a little higher. Just again, for evaluation purposes, I wanted to use the higher number.
You mentioned traffic safety. Was that, you're talking about accidents literally on the bridge, or kind of, there was a big accident serious recently over on Lloyd there?
Yeah, I just talking to the township staff, that was not associated with the bridge. And again, just accidents is not just on the bridge, but associated with the bridge.
I got you. So what you were commenting was just the bridge per se?
Right, not Lloyd Avenue itself.
And then the other thing I had a question about was, we've discussed temporary lights versus permanent lighting.
Right.
What is your thoughts, or how much of potential saving would a temporary light be versus the 150,000 we're looking at for a permanent?
I don't, and I think this is an area where Paul and I may differ a little bit. I like to test things like this out. You know, it would be, in my opinion, a temporary signal, you know, maybe about an additional, by the time you get permitting and rentals done. You know, I think we got an initial rental quote of $6,000 for a month for the signal. You know, if you've got to do some site work to prep the area to put the trailer, you know, so maybe $6,000 to $10,000 to test it out. But that's, you know, that's I think subjective, and you know, it depends of how confident you are. I mean, I think you know, Paul could probably provide a couple examples of locations if you wanted to go around and see how it works elsewhere. You know, we've got a couple of viaducts under the railroad right now that were similar. But again, the Cedarville Road one that intradifferent, I think this seemed because that's a one-lane bridge and it's about the same spacing that we're talking about here. And I think that's going to be one of the key elements. If this is to be effective, you need to minimize the distance between the signals. And that pulls you closer to the stream. That makes the actual installation a little more challenging, and then you can't get too close to the narrow part of the bridge because then the county would start objecting that you're going to run people into their power pits and guide rail and increase their maintenance costs. So there's going to need to be some happy medium that we won't really identify until we're in the design phase. But that will affect how well it operates, because you can't have them too far apart.
So if you went the temporary route, would any of that $6,000 to $10,000 be possibly recouped and then invested? I don't know. I can't visualize.
No, this would be
a trailer. Is that how it works with the?
What we discussed was the portable traffic signals that you often see in construction zones. No, this would be over and above.
So it's basically a light rental almost.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But that's something that could be implemented fairly quickly as opposed to the 12 months time, or is that in addition to the planning?
That could be done in probably about halfway through, because it would still need to be permitted. So PennDOT would basically do the permit. We'd get the survey. PennDOT would do the signal design, which would give us the timing parameters. We would see, where it could go. We'd get a temporary permit while going forward.
Now you mentioned that you kind of like the temporary one. What was your feelings? Why would you say that?
Again, I'm just a little concerned, and this is where we get into the design part about how close we're going to be able to get these indications. Again, Paul, I think, has indicated a high level of confidence, and I worked with Paul for a number of years and trust him. But in this case, I tend to like, in a situation like this, to give it kick the tires, make sure everybody appreciates what they're getting. And again, there are some of the potential other impacts that go beyond just clearing out the queues those couple hours a day.
Because potentially you could adversely affect things, so that you're stuck with the current life.
I mean, I have a number of townships where I'm called in for traffic calming studies. I've got neighborhoods that would love to put a one-lane section of roadway to minimize, traffic through there. So again, but I would defer to the board. That's sort of a policy, where your preference is.
We did one time change the signal at Reesville on 340, and it was a disaster. And we quickly, tried to change it back. I mean, when I say a disaster, it took people 45, 50 minutes to get through the traffic light up there. Yeah. So, there is something to be said to, we thought we were making it better and we made it 50 times worse than it was.
Yes. I'm Jim Spalding. I just wanted to address a question. I live about 500 feet from the bridge, and I work out of my office there at home, so I can see quite closely what's going on. We seem to have two phenomena that create most of the problems. The first one is a repetitious flow, 8 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, 6 o'clock in the afternoon. And that ties in very closely to the school buses and things like that show up, plus the standard loads you would expect, plus the kids coming out of the school over on Manor Avenue and using the road, so hits the 3 o'clock blitz as well. At those peak times, there's 25 car lengths from the bridge to my house. I will have it backed up there 30 minutes minimum every single one of those issues, every single time. And there's an average of about 8 minutes from my driveway to get across the bridge when that happens. It becomes actually a form of gridlock. I mean, if they were all moving the same direction, they move a lot quicker. But, you know, one here, one there, back and forth, and it's a gridlock situation. The other one that happens, and is also, I think, a major concern, is we have an accident on Route 30 bypass, an accident on 322. Either one of those throw literally thousands of vehicles onto Lloyd Avenue. What happens is people come off there, in some cases they don't know where they're going, they think they're going down 322 to get back on 30 or something, and 322 is completely backed up because of the traffic, and then they swing over and they use Lloyd Avenue as a bypass. During those times, it's not unusual to see 50 or 60 cars backed up, with an average time for the car to get through from the 1,000 foot mark, twice my distance. Those times will run 18 to 20 minutes. And I've sat there and calculated these. I have my numbers. I'll have to share them with you. But these two phenomena, I think, is what we really need to address. The rest of the time, people kind of negotiate this thing. They work it out. They come up. They wave at each other. They flash lights. They honk horns. They curse. You know, we occasionally have some road rage there, like, you know, truck not too long ago, that sort of thing. But we haven't, as you pointed out, had really serious accidents. It's this peak time congestion that's a major harassment and bothers a lot of people. And if the system could be set up so that it deals with those properly, I think we'd get tremendous relief from the problem. I don't know that we need to worry about it the other 90% of the time. It seems to sort of work. Right. But some of those times are horrendous. And that's what I would like to see us addressed properly. Thank you.
Joe Wright, 400 Lloyd. And thank you all for coming. I'd like to ask you, Al, if you let Paul.
Mr. Wright, could you come to the podium? It's available now.
We all heard what Al had to say. And what I'd like to do is, since Paul came here tonight, and I thank him for doing that, is to hear your side of how you feel about it. And if there's anything contrary to what Al had said, if there's a difference of opinion, I'd like to hear that, if at all possible. Sure. Is that okay with the board?
That's fine. You can let Paul come.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Paul Lutz. I'm with PennDOT. Love to answer any questions that you guys have. One of the questions I get from Joe is, do I concur with Al? I know Al for a long time. Al's a great engineer. 99% right there with him. The temporary signal's a little tough too, because the placement of the temporary signals. So that would have to be worked out. One of the things that's going in on Boot Road, I don't know if anybody's aware, there's a one-lane bridge or a tunnel just east of Quarry Road. East County Township is putting a signal in there. It's basically the same type of signal that's set up there. I'm sure you guys are driving through that same tunnel. The problem is that you can't see the traffic because of the skew in the roadways. So even if you don't have anybody on the other side, nobody's really racing through it. It's kind of one car goes through, and you almost have to wait until the next car gets through to see it. Al and I went out to the bridge and watched it the other day. Tuesday. And even with no cars on the one side, you could see one car would wait and then have to let the other car clear. And then that's causing a backup even with nobody coming the other way.
Not an opposing car, two cars in the same direction.
Yeah, everybody in the same direction without anybody coming the other direction. I live in the area. I'm not here to say that I want the signal to go in any way. I love the patience that it provides to everybody. I think it's something that we lack in our driving skills these days. I love the comment about waving to everybody, and I do get the foul language once in a while. It's probably my wife yelling at somebody going the other way sometimes. But if you guys have any specific questions for me, I'd love to answer them for you.
Is there anything that we're not doing that would move the process along?
Well, one thing I am going to do for you guys is we have a software. It's called Synchro, and it helps us analyze different types of traffic patterns, traffic signals, cars. So I actually had one from the bridge, the tunnel that was done in Tredyffrin. So I'm going to take that and I'm going to modify it to show our bridge here on Lloyd Avenue, and I'll use some of the numbers that Al gave me. And what I can do with that it's a simulation module. I can show it the way it works now with the yielding conditions, and it'll show how it backs up. And then I can show it with the signal in place, and I'll work with Al and try and figure out where we think we can get. We need to figure out where we can place these stop bars with the traffic signal placements, and that'll give us our clear out distance on the bridge. And that's a time that we have to have. Is if you do with the signal there, you'll have your signal will be red in both directions. And then the first car kind of pulls up, so it'll pull into the detection zone. Whoever gets there first will get a green light. The other guy will get a red light. He'll get a green to go across, and when that side clears, we'll go to yellow. And the yellow will be about 3 seconds. And then there'll be an all red as we try to get that person completely across the bridge and clear the other side before we give green. That's that clear out that we have to figure out. Al and I were kind of timing as the cars were going across, depending on the speed of the cars getting across there. Average was about 8 to 10 seconds or so, something like that. But what's happening is when you're doing one-in-one, you're constantly getting that clear out time that's being lost each time that one-in-one is going. So when nobody's there and you do see people flush across, I see 20 cars drive straight across that. If you can, I think it's better going, I'll call it south down on Lloyd towards Lancaster. I think you have a little bit better sight distance going that way. Going northbound, because of the bend and now with all the brush that's grown in, it's a little tough to kind of see if anybody's coming down in there. And then again, there's that crest to that bridge, so the small cars over there, it's even tough to see them over there when they're parked. So again, we'll run the synchro, and we can submit that to you guys. And it's actually a pretty cool thing. It's a visual for you guys. It's not just graphs and numbers for everybody. It's a visual simulation to kind of show how it reacts to the two different situations. And I think one good thing is this tunnel on Boot Road. It's under construction now. I anticipate this being turned on probably in the next 6 weeks to 2 months. So that'll be a neat gauge to see how that operates. To everybody kind of knows how it goes today, and we'll see how it impacts the road out there as well. With the synchro analysis too, I can show how it impacts the stop sign at Pennsylvania Avenue and how it affects if it would back in queue to Lancaster Avenue, which I really don't think it would. One of the things you'll notice is the bridge is kind of being fed by the Lloyd Avenue signal at Lancaster Pike, Lancaster Avenue. What happens is that queues up, up almost to the second arch bridge. When that goes green, there's all these people, their parents taking their kids to drop them off, or kids driving to the schools. So that whole platoon now goes down, and basically it's kind of unimpeded by the stop sign, and then gets stopped at that bridge. And that's that morning queue that you see heading northbound. Then coming off of the bypass, you got a steady stream of traffic that's able to come down and make a right and come right on the Lloyd. So you can get 30, 40, 50 cars in there easily at a time. And I've witnessed that backing up around the cornfield as well. So again, I'm not here as a proponent for the signal. I'm just trying to give you some of the facts. From the ones we've installed, they do work. They help with that one-in-one. It gets rid of that. It manages both sides really well. From the one in Tredyffrin, we haven't seen any backups at all. We haven't had any negative input from it. I'll see for the Boot Road one when that goes in.
The one in Tredyffrin, is that a permanent signal?
Yes, it's a permanent installation.
Not the temporary one. Okay.
My question is about the RV funding. So typically what we would have is if a developer came make the traffic improvements, and then they obviously provide the funding. So if we don't have a developer coming in to provide the funding, then that goes on our list of capital improvements. But if the Arlie grant is available, how would that work for us?
You guys have been great. Count Township's been fantastic with going after funding. I've been personally involved with at least 3 of the Arlie programs that have done great work here in the township. One was the signal at the bypass. That was like a $350,000 Arlie grant that you guys acquired and put that signal in.
20% match?
There is no match to it, but we definitely recommend putting a match to it because it just moves you up in the submission piles because there's so many people that are going after that funding. But we definitely, I would, definitely help get you guys through this. It's a good project for it. One thing about that too is the point you made about going after the development money. One thing I really like to say is that all that traffic out there is in Cowan Township residents. So to see you guys foot that whole bill for that bridge, I don't really think is fair. I would definitely go after the borough and see if they would be willing to contribute. I would definitely talk to the school district and see if they're willing to contribute. I know it's tough, but it is a lot of their traffic. And the Arlie grant is definitely a great way of getting the funding for that program.
So I know in the past we've done 20 or 30% match. You said that does move you up in the list.
Yes.
Okay. When is the next round of Arlie grants?
Pretty soon, I think.
I'm led, this is unofficial, speaking to the office in Harrisburg, I'm led to believe it's likely in June, the next round of applications, but that's until it comes out.
It's traditionally been June, but it hasn't been announced.
That's a viable program because it's fairly quick in turnaround. That's why a lot of people like it. The Green Light Go wouldn't be a good program to go after. It's only for existing signals. And there's multimodal, but that's a little tougher too. Marla's your best approach.
So can we reach out to the borough and to the school district first? Because maybe if we do a 30% match, we could each take 10% of the match.
Absolutely. Mr. Love and I spoke earlier this week, and staff had met early this week to review this issue. So we kind of have a game plan on the table. Mr. Federico is going to give a work order for survey, preliminary design, everything to queue us up through to and through the art grant. So we were hoping to have that for the next meeting.
Thank you. Mr. Wright.
Yes, Paul, if you would, could you give me your take on what your position is with temporary versus permanent? Do you think that the temporary lights would actually prove anything, or do you think that that's warranted or not?
We've done temporary lights at a lot of locations, Joe. They do the job. We can set it up and you can see how it works. And if there's something unforeseen, we could possibly bring something to light. I just, my personal opinion, I wouldn't put the temporary lights in. I can show you with the synchro analysis how it'll work. It's pretty accurate. Even waiting to see the Boot Road signal blast. That's a perfect example of this type of operation. And if there's something that's going to happen, it would happen there as well as this other bridge. The one comment by Al is accurate. It's if you build it, they will come. If it's a little bit easier to get down Lloyd Avenue, a lot of people who drive down 322. Myself, I know that if I come in from work at 4:30 sometimes, I can even look at my Waze on my my app, my phone, and I can see if the bridge is back up. I'll go straight down into town and come through Pennsylvania Avenue or go down Lancaster Avenue. Again, I'm in no rush because I'm almost home. So, sitting at the bridge for a couple minutes to me doesn't. I check my text unofficially as I'm stopped in traffic. But, personally, I think it's going to be a little tough to figure out where to put the temporary signals.
Especially at flood places, you would have to anchor them.
It could be. I think a lot of the points that Al brought to light are dead on. You definitely want to reach out to the county. You want to talk with DEP and see what kind of impacts. That right away, that's going to tell us where we are, and see if we can get over those roadblocks, and see if anybody's going to bring anything to the table that's going to impede the movement. You can still apply for the Arlen grant. We can still, we don't want to miss that. So even if you're moving forward, so you can still apply, and then you can receive it if you have a difference of opinion.
Just one thing, Mr. Lawrence. This is not a PennDOT mandate, but this is something you support.
No, when I spoke to Joe contacted me and was asking about the process and the bridge. And when I spoke to him, we have been getting preliminary submissions from the development on I call it the cornfield. And we were looking at the bridge. We knew it was backing up in there. So you can't require anything on a local road. We work with municipalities closely and kind of try to help them in getting the proper direction. So we were telling them that most likely we're going to go after some kind of improvement for that bridge. I know that replacement of that bridge would just be probably impossible, but the signalization would be something to alleviate that traffic. Our main focus would be on 322, Lloyd Avenue, Rock Raymond, that intersection where they would probably have their main entrance to. So we made those preliminary comments to it. So I may have said mandate, I apologize. PennDOT can't mandate anything onto the local roads. We work with you guys very closely, and we give you our judgment and opinion on it, and you guys make a decision.
Okay, we had a question, Mr. Trago.
Jeff Trago, 2 Beaver Run Road. As part of your analysis and the numbers from the county, is it taking into effect not just the total number of cars, but which direction they're coming? Because different times of day, like Mr. Spalding said, they're coming from different directions. And are there the idea of weight triggers that would keep that light green from one direction for a longer period of time? For example, in the morning, you are looking towards the borough for additional funding. A lot of that, as you stated, is coming out of West Bradford Township, coming down Poorhouse Road. So you can go, you can keep going as far as where you look for funding. But, a lot of that's one direction at that time of the day. Another time of the day, on a Sunday morning, you have cars going both directions to and from St. Joe's Church, which can get backed up a lot too. And nobody from the county is going to come out and count cars on a Sunday morning. So you miss that part of this too. So, and then in the afternoons, you're getting the school traffic coming back out. You're getting the rush hour traffic, everybody coming home off the bypass. So quite often it's lopsided as it's entering that bridge. Is there ways, is this a thought process, is this still done, that you could trigger it at, okay, it stays green, triggering it at the Spaldings, if it's backed all the way up the Beaver Run Road, it stays open that much longer, that kind of it, yeah.
The counts that we were given from the county were directional, so that they did have both directions. And as discussed with Paul, depending on the equipment that goes out there and the programming, the expectation is if there is a queue on one side, it would stay green for that side to help dissipate it. The analysis would have to be done as PennDOT develops the timing, and would just be to see how long you want to cycle it. How long do you want to leave one side red? Because conceivably, now you're building up on that side. So you don't want to let it go too long on one side, otherwise you're going back and forth. But that would be as the part of the design that PennDOT does, is looking to try to figure out
what the cycle length would be so that it tries to balance that. Yes.
Yes, Mrs. Spalding?
I just have a question about boundary because maybe in all these years I'm wrong. I thought that that Callan Township, the house that's on the first house that's over the bridge in Downingtown, on the right-hand side, is that house not in Lloyd? Isn't that house in Callan?
Yes.
So where does Callan's line cross the road near the bridge? In other words, the whole bridge and both sides of the bridge are in Callan, correct?
Based on what I was looking at, the center line of the road on the south side, it's Downingtown one side, Callan on the other, and then it comes up towards the creek. But that pump station
Is in Downingtown.
well, they own. I just looked at. They're the owners. They're the property owners.
No, I'm just saying, is that
I-
is that pump station in Downingtown or is it on Callan land? Considering the high school's on Callan land, it's worth asking.
Brian's looking it up right now.
Yeah, I thought we owned both. I thought Callan was both sides of
I
the
think
road.
ideally where we would put the pole going north would be within that pump station property.
Yeah, but my point was Callan, the high school's in Callan Township.
The
So
middle
I'm not
school.
sure.
No, the middle school.
The middle
is
school,
something-
I'm sorry, the
yes,
middle
yeah.
school.
The boundary line based on Chesco View splits the pump station building in half.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
It goes right through the center of the pump station.
Wow, and then continues around that house? All of the houses in Callan, right?
No, the house is split. The first house is not. The first house is in count, but that's it. The next house is down or out of
Okay,
count.
but the first house is entirely in, so it's curving out towards that house.
No, it's a direct. It's a jog square. It
Okay,
comes over through the pump station to the center line, down the center line, and across that property line.
thank you.
That's part of the survey that would be done too.
Yeah, I was just curious, because I thought they were both, always thought it
But
was
that
all-
parcel that the pump station is on extends across the stream. So,
Oh, okay.
and so if we put it anywhere over near that pump station, we're on a parcel that is owned by
They're
Downingtown.
not using that anymore, right?
That I do not know.
No, are they? I don't think so, they are using it. Really? Yeah. Okay. I thought they had family.
Mr. Vicario, did you have a question?
Yes, I have a question. I know the county owns this bridge. What would it cost for another 3 or 4 foot, 5 foot to add on to it? So traffic can move both ways, instead of fighting over a light.
It's historic bridge, I don't think we're done.
Well, if it's historic, it can't be, because they just redone it. They just redid the stone, it's not historic anymore.
What about you, Frank?
My understanding, talking with the county bridge engineer, is that, and this, I guess legally this would be hearsay, but it's, they don't believe it's historic, but there were concerns that any attempts to improve that bridge would draw a lot of objection from people considering it to be potentially historic, which would make it a much more challenging process than the county was interested in pursuing the last time they redid the bridge. I believe there were some conversations about potentially widening it, and the county opted not to. I really couldn't give you a number at this point on what the widening would cost, but with a high level of confidence, I could say it would be a lot more than a traffic signal.
Well, I'm sure, but it would be better than a traffic signal. I mean, common sense. Josh, you went to Westchester, don't you? What are they doing there? For which bridge right there, going into Westchester?
Which bridge is it?
The singing bridge.
322 bridge.
Yeah.
They're building a whole new bridge there.
Yeah.
They're getting rid of the
Yeah, they're getting rid of the old one.
They're building it next to it.
Right.
Is that what they're doing?
Yeah, it's next to it.
I
I was like,
saw
oh
it
yeah.
on track, I figured they're doing something, but I couldn't, it was so far away that. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Trego?
One more brief comment. Approximately 30 years ago, or so, 35 years ago, they did major work to that bridge where it was. They took the crown of it, they added, what, 40 foot of stone on one side of the bridge. So they don't want to put a traffic light on there. I mean, I think you can have some pushback that way because they're, like you said, it's not historic anymore. It's not what it was. I think that can be worked the question because I almost guarantee you the county bridge engineer was not there when they made this decision 30 years ago, 35 years ago to do that change to it. Because I remember us taking fire trucks across it changed because they took the crown out of it and built up the one side. So
It was very nice because Lloyd Avenue was closed for a year. It was a dead-end road for a whole year. It was very nice.
yeah, and I tread lightly on the historical thing, but it does have meaning, the programs, et cetera, that allowed for the bridge to be built, but at some point it gets so blown out of proportion that it might be we might lose out on a really good solution for a solution, because they don't want you to suddenly it's too historic to put a traffic signal near. I don't know.
Okay, Mr. Wright.
Anybody else?
Well, I thought you had your hand up. Did you have your hand up?
No, I'm all right.
Okay.
I got one more comment.
Oh, yes, sir.
I'm Leroy to 580 Lloyd. I had mentioned before about stop signs, one at Geo Carlson and one at the other intersection. That way, at least the traffic wouldn't come zooming down there at 70, 80 miles an hour. That would at least keep the buses, slow them down, so the congestion won't be all the speed, because it's hard to get out the driveway. My wife's been hit just trying to get into our driveway. Our mailbox has been hit. I mean, it just seems like there's no end to what's going on that street. And if that development gets put over there, it's just going to be worse for us. So I don't know what the answer could be, but 2 stop signs at those intersections would at least slow the traffic down.
Did we look into, Ms. Denny, the stop sign?
And actually, Mr. Federico can speak, there has to be a warrant. That's part of the, we can't just put stop signs out without a warrant. And if you want to explain that a little better.
Specific, again, stop signs legally are intended for assigning right-of-way, preventing collisions. And the manuals that we rely on for these things explicitly states that stop signs should not be installed to slow traffic down. I understand it's been done in certain places, but if you're following the letter of the law, you're not to be installing stop signs to calm traffic. So I don't know if the police had looked at this one. I had met with several members of the department a couple of months ago and went over the explicit regulations, and to the best of my knowledge, they've been doing the evaluations of locations, but I don't know if they've had this one.
Also, Chief Elias had done some work over there, and I think he could share some insights on that at the next meeting.
So we'll get an update for you at the next meeting. If you would like an update before that, then please your name and phone number with Ms. Denny, okay?
All right, thank you.
We just don't have that data right now, and Chief Elias isn't here. Okay?
Thanks.
Mr. Wright, you had a question?
Yes. 2 things. One is, with all due respect, I wouldn't even want the bridge 2 lanes because that would only aggravate the problem we're having with speeding. So I'd like to keep it 1 lane, but I'd like to have it single. That's just my personal opinion. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Paul for coming here tonight. I know we spoke, and I may have exaggerated a few things that he actually told me, but at the meeting, the previous meeting that we were at when I discussed this, I'd like to personally thank you for coming because you did offer your services, and I know it's on your time, and we really appreciate it. And I think the township residents appreciate it. Thank you. I thank you, Paul.
Do you guys have any other questions for me or anything?
I have a question Any questions from Mr. Wachowski? Okay, no, we're good, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Day.
Yes, we have several township volunteer vacancy appointments. Board has been examining interviews for the last couple of months. You know, it is coming to a point, there are times we're having problems with quorum, so if the board could please move on some of those possible candidates.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to open nominations for the vacancies on the planning commission.
So moved.
I'll second that.
Okay, motion made by Commissioner Chambers and seconded by Commissioner Young. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, passes 4-0. So, well, George is gonna make nominations.
Oh,
And then
okay.
we're gonna have, and then we'll vote on everybody that's nominated. Yeah, that was just
So
opening.
we're doing planning commission first?
Yes.
Okay, so planning commission, I'd like to nominate Michael Irwin, planning commission.
We have a second? I'll second. Okay. Any other nominations for planning?
Yeah, I'd like to also nominate William, what's your last name, Shoes?
Okay. Do we have a second?
Excuse me, can you speak louder?
He
Sorry,
nominated
yeah.
Michael Irwin and William Shue for planning. Okay, do we have a second for William Shue?
I'll second
Okay. Any other nominations for planning? Okay. I'll entertain a motion to close nominations for the planning commission.
So moved.
Okay.
that. Second.
All those in favor of closing nominations, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay. All right, now all those in favor of Michael Irwin for the planning commission, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, approved 4-0. And all those in favor of William Shue for the planning commission, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, 4-0. So Michael Irwin and William Shue have been appointed to the planning commission. Okay. I will entertain a motion to open nominations for the zoning hearing board
This is for the alternate position.
for alternate position. We only have the alternate position. Motion made by Commissioner Chambers, seconded by Commissioner Young. All those in favor of opening nominations, please say aye. Aye. Okay, passes 4-0. All right, I'll entertain any nominations for the zoning hearing board.
Nominate Mike Noble,
You spell the last name?
Noble.
Okay, do we have a second? I'll second. Any other nominations for zoning? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to close nominations for the zoning hearing board.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. All right, and now I'll entertain a motion to appoint Mike Noble as the zoning hearing board alternate.
Aye.
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 Three.
Aye.
Okay, it's 4-0. All right, I'll now entertain a motion to open nominations for the historical commission.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Any nominations for historical commission?
Nominate Mark Evans for historic commission.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. other nominees for historic?
Yes, I'd like to nominate Jim Spalding for.
Okay. Do you have a second? I'll second. Okay. Any other nominees for historic?
I'd also like to nominate Paul Stevens for.
We have many openings on historic, so if anybody is interested, please apply. All right, do we have a second for Paul Stevens?
Second.
Okay, any other nominees for historic? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to close nominations for historic commission.
So moved. Sorry. Second.
Okay. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Okay, take a vote on Mark Evans for historic. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Okay. Take a vote on Jim Spalding for historic. All in favor, say aye. Aye. And Paul Stevens. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Okay. Oh, okay. I'll entertain a motion to open nominations for the Parks and Recreation Committee.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor for opening nominations, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, and any nominations for Parks and Rec?
I'm going to mispronounce her name. Is it
Leisha.
Leisha Giaccardi?
Karina.
I butchered it thoroughly, I'm sorry. Yes, I nominate her.
Any seconds?
Second.
Okay. Any other nominations for Parks and Rec? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to close nominations for the Parks and Rec Committee.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right, and we'll take a vote on Leisha Karini for Parks and Rec. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, all right. Oh, yeah. Okay, so that is all of our nominations. We have one more interview on the 23rd for historic. And again, anybody that's interested in serving on Parks and Rec and Historic Commission, please feel free to apply. We still have several openings on both committees.
We'll have an opening for the municipal.
Oh, and we also have an opening for municipal authority due to Commissioner Contento's resignation. So if anybody's interested in that, when are those meetings? Fourth Monday?
Yeah.
Fourth Monday of the month. Parks and Rec, we're looking for people who are really going to come out and help out with all of our activities. And Historic Commission, you have the opportunity to weigh in on development that's affecting the Historic Overlay District, and also could do research on the bridge to see if it's a historic structure. Just throwing it out there. Okay. All right. Anything else, Ms. Denny?
Mr. Fragel is here tonight to talk about the consideration of the street sweeping award for 2019.
Okay.
Good evening. I gave you reports on 3 estimates we have for street sweeps in the entire township. The lowest bidder we've used 2 or 3 times already. They do a great job for us. And just looking for your approval to go ahead and so we can get this going.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion to award the street sweeping contract to Thieving Power Sweeping in the amount of $9,020.
Second.
Motion made by Commissioner Young, seconded by Commissioner Chambers. Any comments or questions from the board?
Yeah, Mike, was this under the bid limit, so we just needed 3 quotes?
Yes.
Okay. What's the bid limit now, 18,000?
I think it's 18.
Yeah. Okay. And we had talked about doing some of the township properties.
Yeah, there's enough money. We had 13,000 budgeted for it.
Okay.
So there'll be enough in there to actually get him to do the township building, the parks, parking lots and things like that, the golf course parking lot.
Okay.
So we should be able to cover all that.
Okay.
Okay, any other comments or questions? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, passes 4-0. Thanks, Mike. we already took care of our ordinance, so we'll move on to the finance department. I'll entertain a motion to approve general checks 43222 through 43270.
So moved. Second.
Motion made by Commissioner Young, seconded by Commissioner Chambers. Any comments or questions on this one? Does anybody need to abstain from anything?
No.
Okay. All right. Any comments or questions from the floor? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, passes 4-0. All right. I will entertain a motion to approve the April 11th, 2019 Board of Commissioners minutes.
So moved. Second.
Okay, motion made by Commissioner Young, seconded by Commissioner Chambers. Any comments or corrections? I did see something on one of the sets of minutes, but I need to find it. It might not be on this one. Okay, yeah, it's not on this one. Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, passes 4-0. I'll entertain a motion to approve the April 25th, 2019 Board of Commissioners minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Commissioner Chambers, seconded by Commissioner Tindaro. Any comments, questions, or corrections on this one? Let me just double check here. Oh, okay. Under the golf course report, Mr. D. Young is listed as Mr. D. Long. So if we could just make that correction. And that is all I have. Any other comments or corrections? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, passes 4-0. And then I always forget, do we need to motion to accept the planning commission?
Just acknowledge.
Okay. We will acknowledge receipt of the planning commission minutes, but we will acknowledge that Commissioner Tindaro was present at the planning commission.
I checked my records.
Oh, you weren't?
There was a conflict.
Oh,
Yes, it was canceled.
okay.
Sure, I was not present.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, so we'll acknowledge receipt of the minutes. No corrections or notice required. Okay, boards and commissions updates, Parks and Rec.
Working on the summer series. Abby's doing a good job getting sponsored for that. Again, we'll have 2 summer series that are the movies, and one in July will be a band and fireworks.
Okay. COG, no report. Municipal authority.
We pretty much talked about the pump stations they commented on tonight and the financing for that. So.
Okay. Dara.
Our big thing that we're working on now is the agreement with Infomark ends in 2028 with no clear rule or no clear outcome of what happens to the plant, part of the plant that Infomark owns. So we're trying to work another extension to that deal so that we could own the plant for $1 at the end of that lease period.
Okay, fire board.
I don't have a report.
Okay, historical commission.
For Historical Commission, we discussed the membership. We have been recruiting new members, and we just had 3, almost 4 new people approved tonight.
Okay, Lincoln Highway.
I wasn't at the last meeting, so George, you have anything?
The last one, I think that was the our
Strategic plan, we were
yeah,
working
that
on the
was,
strategic
I
vision.
think that was like, I guess it was, yeah. Kind of just quickly, but yeah, it was pretty much a brainstorming session where we talked about ideas for staff to utilize for that. So.
Okay. We'll move on to additional business. I just want to thank everybody that turned out for Town Pride Day, and thank you especially to Noelle Bernard for her sponsorship. And we had a great time, and we got a lot done cleaning up, especially Mr. Chambers, who was dangling from North Bailey Road. and trying to clean up, even though we told him not to. So, but he survived, so that was good. But thank you, everyone. It really gives us an opportunity to do something great for the township, and I think that everybody that participated had a great time. So if you didn't get a chance to participate this year, come next year. I will come as an alumni from the board. Yes.
One minor comment. We're seeing less debris, I think, in various areas cleaning, because when you start off in Geo Carlson getting 300 or 400 bags out one year, then it gets down to 100, then it gets down to 30, and now we're getting 10 or a dozen. Kudos to everybody.
We only have a pickup truck. We only have a pickup truck full.
We had a huge
Yeah, but it was just one pickup truck full this year, right?
Yeah.
We went back out, we got another pickup truck.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So
Get that shopping cart we found in the woods.
Yeah.
So there was quite a lot of attendance, and that was great. And you get food here, and we grill hot dogs for everybody, so it's nice. All right, any other items of additional business? Okay, we'll move on to public comment. We have Rick Urban.
Hi, Rick Urban, 54 Carlson Way. Normally, we're out here giving you guys a hard time. I just wanted to thank the board. They took care of a couple of the concerns with the weeds on Lloyd Farm and along the street and the removal of the sign. So I just wanted to thank you guys for getting that done.
Thank you.
That's it.
We appreciate that. All right, and we have Mark Graham.
Good evening, board. Mark Graham, 138 Ascot. I see some of my neighbors here from the Wedgwood Estates. I just want to say hi to them. They're friends and also part of the local politics of Wedgwood. For about the past year, we've been mulling over the idea of a community garden at Wedgwood. We've had what I think is a very productive process of trying to figure out what kind of garden we want, who's going to be involved, and what the final version is going to look like. But my idea is what might be good for Wedgwood might be good for Callan as well. We're currently in the process of getting to a meeting in September. We're going to finalize plans for our community garden, either up or down, and what it's going to look like. If you would be interested in a community garden in Callan Township that would involve a lot of people, and anybody who lives in Callan Township would be able to participate, if you'd like to think about this, I'd be happy to spearhead the effort to undergo the planning, the processing of everything, finding a good site, and eventually administering the garden. I'd be happy to do so. I think community gardening is fantastic. I think it's a good way to actually bring members of the community together. It's a fantastic way to achieve food sustainability and security, and I think it's kind of the wave of the future that does a lot of good for a lot of communities. So anyway, I just wanted to float the idea. Community gardening, if you're interested, I'd be happy to give you my contact information. I can come up with a proposal, work with the board members, see what sites maybe Callan would have to offer, and just get the ball rolling.
So we used to have a green task force that looked at things like that, and we did for 2 years have a community garden.
Oh, okay.
We didn't get many people to sign up. I think our first year we had 2.
Okay.
And then the next year we had 3.
Okay.
And it, as the person who was a staff member that signed to help the task force left, and it kind of fell apart after that. So we have had it before.
Okay.
Something that I think we would be interested in.
I would be interested in looking into it.
What I was going to say, that I think it's the Presbyterian Church, I'm not certain, right up.
Oh, is that next to the softball field?
Yes.
Yes, I think that's a Methodist church, but I'm not mistaken.
Okay. Have you talked with them, because they're in town,
They are. I have.
and they do have a garden.
Yeah. Yep. I can do that.
Are you working with them?
Not with them currently.
Okay. Well,
That's a thought.
Okay. Good. Thank you.
I think we'd be interested in pursuing it further.
Okay.
Look at what you propose.
Good. How about I leave you my contact information at the meeting and works like that, okay? Good. Good. Thanks for your time. Appreciate it.
Okay, any other public comment? Okay, Mr. Dion?
Mark Young at 20 Beaver Run Road. I'm trying to keep this short. I had a lot of information on Ingleside and another subject. I want to go and turn first to a page I found in Management Discussion Analysis, December 31st, 2016. And under Financial Management, it says, our financial report is designed to provide our citizens and taxpayers with a general overview of the township finances and to show the board's accountability for the money it receives. If you have questions about this report and wish to request this information, please contact the township manager, Ms. Denny. Last Thursday, the 2nd, I sent an email to both Mr. Wilson and Ms. Denny. I wasn't sure if I'd get their email address, but I used the first initial, last name, to send it to them. Not sure that got through, so I sent it to the overall Count Township, and I believe it was Ms. Moore that forwarded that email on to Ms. Denny and Mr. Wilson. The email is very simple, requesting Mr. Wilson to be at this meeting. I was happy when he walked in. I was unhappy when he walked out. Services, the numbers I'm going to talk about probably really belong in his purvey. But if you're going to invite us to ask questions, it'd be nice to get an answer. Even I can't tell you, even I'm sorry I can't get back to you this week, and I call you next week. But it's been a week and I've heard absolutely nothing. So the tone of the paper doesn't follow the tone of the conversation. Ms. Miller and Abby Swan have been absolutely terrific. They're polite, they're great employees, and they're tribute to this township. Politeness, responses, right back at you. So I don't know why I didn't get an answer, Ms. Denny. Maybe you could explain.
I actually was in the emergency room.
Well, it's been, how long have you been back at work?
I came back.
Okay. So what's a expected time frame for a reply?
Mr. Young, I'm not going to argue, but I'm sorry that I did not get back to you. I was out of the office.
Okay. So we're just not going to do that?
Well, going forward, if you copy me on the email, then I can make sure that it gets followed up on.
Okay. It's a very easy question, so I was kind of surprised. Now about Count Township Golf Course. The township bought that golf course for $2,200,000 in 2007, March 2007, I believe, was the settlement. There's only been one appraisal done. It was at that time. It was actually appraised at $2,300,000. He bought it for $2,200,000, so he saved $100,000. That's good. However, the debt hasn't really decreased, and in 2017, we borrowed another $1.2 million to invest in our golf course.
No,
That's in the financial statements.
the golf course, the loan was
To see that.
yeah, so what we did is reborrow money because it was at 4.4 interest %, and we got it down to 2.2 aggregate %. But the $1.2 million was for road projects and other items.
Okay. It reads in your financial report right next to the golf course. So.
But that's not what that money went to.
Well,
Money
that's
went
because we haven't seen $1.2 million in improvements to that golf course whatsoever.
No, there's never been an additional amount of money borrowed against it.
And I guess finally to on the golf course anyway. And I'm glad we had the podium, but I'm quite a. Excuse me for a minute, I just find the page. Trying to keep so organized back there in the chair. There's basically 3 different notes in the financial statements that golf course is not really an ongoing profit center. Excuse me for 1 second. I highlighted that paper clip. I did a whole lot of things, but apparently I can't find that statement at the present time. So bear with me for 1 more minute, please. Here we are. Sorry, it was on the other. There was actually in 2017 no P to those same financial statements. And note N. Note N, we'll go with first, deficit net position. The township's priority funds include the operations of Ingleside Golf Course. For 2017, the golf course expenditures exceeded revenues. The rolling deficit fund balance is $116,000. The township is implementing plans to eliminate the deficit, which includes additional use of the course, and improving the course and restructuring fees. But in number 18, the golf course has suffered recurring losses from operations. The net deficiency raises substantial doubts about its ability to continue as a going concern. Management is reviewing the operations, but basically you've said in your own financial statements that it's a substantial doubt about its ability to move forward. Yet we're still on the golf course with no signs, and we're still losing money every year. Why are we doing that? Why are we not looking for a buyer, looking for a management company, looking for Ron Jaworski, who bought Downingtown? I like playing the course. I play the course. So I found out that I pay the course now twice. I pay my greens fees and I pay my taxes. And I don't know what portion of my taxes are actually going to fund this golf course. And I was hoping Mr. Wilson would be here tonight, as I requested in that email, and he's not. So I don't know what the answer I can receive from that is. Can I get a promise to get an answer? What are our annual contribution to the golf course?
Well, we can follow up with Mr. Wilson. Do you have any?
Basically, the golf course doesn't pay the note that's due. That's what the township taxpayers pick up is the $120,000 usually.
$100 and some thousand a year?
Yes, but we also pay about the same amount for the Griffith Farm. And we also have other open space that, we've acquired that we're paying notes on.
Okay. Just because you have it in certain areas doesn't mean you have to have it in each area.
I mean, if tomorrow we just abandoned it and had open space, we'd be paying the $120,000.
Well, that's not realistic. What I'm asking for, you wouldn't do that. You would try to find a buyer and get a realistic price for it.
There's not been a majority of the board that's been in favor of selling the golf course, but at different times there have been board members that have been interested in that.
Well, it seems to me that it would make sense to sell it rather than continue to pay $100,000 a year to have that golf course. I got a heart attack today when I sold $1.2 million, but thanks for telling me that was on the roads. So the last thing I'd like to get a follow-up from the board. I went back and read over to 2000. When you start looking at one thing, you find other things. In 2016, in the findings, the fire company was rated significant deficiency. Plan completion date for corrective action plan was December 31st, 2017. There goes on and on actually here. The segregation of duties, apparently we went through some change of personnel and policies and procedures were not followed. That was due by December 31st, 2017. Yet I could find nothing going forward to tell me that deficiency has actually been taken care of. There was a material weakness in the current year financials and recommendations. And I think that, nope, now we got more. For 2017, 2000 fire company, significant deficiencies and segregation duty material weaknesses. Kind of worries you as a taxpayer to see financials getting rated that way. I know you have a AA rating, and that's good, but it seems like we have a lot of problems in-house that need to still be cleaned up and haven't been answered yet.
I don't have any information about that. Yeah, look into that with Mr. Wilson.
And for the community's understanding, our department heads only come to the second meeting of the month. They only come to the first meeting of the month if there's something that they need to have a workshop with the board about. So the department heads are here at the second meeting.
Okay. That was something I would have found out from a response email from either you or Mr. Wilson, so but I would have waited till next meeting. But substantial concerns about the golf course. I mean, that's really, we're throwing money at that thing. It's an okay course. It's okay for a hacker like me to get out there and play. You're not going to get, professional players out there playing that course. There's better courses nearby. So I think in the, adjustment, some sandbankers are half some. We got to take a serious look at moving that piece of property and making some money off of it. just like to get a response if anybody thinks that way.
Well, I think that way, but I have not had the support of the majority of the board.
Is there a reason for the other board members why you don't want to sell that golf course that's operating at such a loss? Do you just choose not to answer, or is it yes or no?
No, we bought it as open space that, for this township. The developer had a plan of 2,500 townhomes on that property. And we bought it for open space, knowing that, yes, for 20 years, we were probably gonna run a deficit. And then at the end of that, the bond would be paid off, and the golf course would run at either a surplus or break even.
So I looked also at, I mentioned at the last meeting, Paxton Hollow and Marple Township. They're contributing $250,000 a year to the general fund.
They also
They were in a
have,
bit same position.
well,
many
they
years
also
ago.
they have a clubhouse and a liquor license.
Well, they added all that.
So
I wasn't there before.
Right, so we don't have the space to add that unless we buy the craft house, which we weren't interested. That was part, when we went to buy it, we could have bought the craft house and the golf course as
Right. That would make
a
sense.
bundle. We decided not to, one, because of how much work that house needed, and two, we didn't know if we really wanted to be in the business of running a wedding venue or party venue, or that just wasn't what we were interested in. So we decided not to buy the house at the time, and we bought it as open space. And most of the land now is completely deeded open space, which really limits who you can sell it to. You could sell it to essentially somebody that is going to run a golf course.
Run a golf course, right. At
So,
a profit.
But I'm not disagreeing with you that there are problems over there, and we've changed pros in the last year, and we need to do some more work. So.
I mean, the report that we got from the township or the golf manager or the last report, we're doing better. There's people coming to the simulator. We got 3,000 rounds this year compared to 2,760 rounds. There wasn't any numbers to back up anything that we're doing better. And that was perfectly acceptable. I don't know how
I think
that
there's
works.
a lot that goes on, in work in the background that either you don't see or you can't see because they're personnel issues. So I would say I don't disagree that there isn't problems, but we need to and we should do better.
So why still hold on to it as a golf course ourselves instead of selling the thing?
Because we bought it for open space.
It would still be office space if it was sold as a golf course.
We bought it as for us to hold as open space for our residents.
Commissioner Young was involved with the golf course purchase.
Well, apparently that's
We
correct.
were not at this end, we weren't involved, but
But if you're,
I mean, now you can take your dog out there on the trail and we don't say anything. If it's sold to a private entity, they're going to say, you can't be on our course. You can't, people throw parties in their backyard, which is actually on the golf course
I know,
property.
I play the course.
Like those type of things will come to an end. And we bought the course for people to use as recreational activity in Callan Township. And there's paved paths that people walk on now. And, if you sell it to a private developer or even a operator, they're going to shoo you off the course.
I've never seen any walkers out there, to be quite honest with you. I played the course.
I mean, I have two very good friends that live along there, and they live down by the lakes, and you can see walkers and people walking their dog all the time.
Okay. It's just my idea, and I think the community's idea. We'd like to see the golf course sold to somebody to make some money off it, improve the course. Josh, you gotta admit this, the course needs quite a bit of work. I don't know how any senior citizen can possibly play number 9, if you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
That set of stairs is dangerous for anyone to walk up. I hold on to that railing when I walk down because it's that dangerous set of stairs. And it's quite a set of stairs. If you've never been out there, you should take a look.
we were all out there at one point, we taken a look at, of course, I don't play myself. but
Right.
I have been around the course.
But I mean, number 9 is by far, it's a dangerous hole actually. So you're putting people that are playing that course and walking up those steps, you're putting them in a danger position also.
Well, Commissioners Tindaro and Chambers are appointed to the golf committee, and they have worked with the golf course manager and the pro. Do you want to speak to some of the things that you've implemented or had them implement since joining?
Well, the pro, I mean, he came in mid-year, was it last year or so, but he's got a lot of good ideas to see, you know, promoting the golf course, and hopefully if we get some dry weather that would help.
I understand that.
But so I really enjoy what he's doing. He's a lot more organized, it seems, and they're heading the right direction with that. We're due to have a golf committee meeting in the near future anyway, so I will bring up some of your points, obviously.
Okay.
I think the simulator is going to help people who, that's brand new too. They just got that about a few months ago. That'll help people.
There's 15 of those booths down in Malvern that you can go to, and you know,
well,
but right there, it's the same thing.
Yeah,
so.
that maybe, but they didn't have that before. That should see a profit increase that they didn't have the opportunity to do in the past. So.
How would I become part of this committee then?
I'm sorry?
Could I become part of that committee?
I don't think it's a public committee, it's just the board members working with the golf staff. We haven't, it's not like an advertised meeting or anything like that. But we can think about that and figure out what that would look like.
I mean, it certainly makes sense to get more people in there, people who played the course and people who look, you know, I have both sides of the table. I played the course and I looked at finances. You know, I like the course. I mean, for a home course, it's fine. But, you know, I don't like it at $105,000 a year of loss. So I don't want to pay for it twice. And that's my biggest concern. So I'd like to be part of that committee. I think having somebody on both sides of it would probably help add to that.
Okay.
Because I only got so much time to dig into these. There's a lot more numbers to look at, and I try to cut it down for time tonight. So.
Thank you. And Commissioner Chambers, would you be willing to keep in touch with Mr. Dion about?
Sure. Grab one of my cards for you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I saw Mr. Desario. Did you have a question?
Well, I was going grass, I told you, man, the grass at Burger King's a little high on the highway there. But it's just a little high.
Where's it at?
Burger King. Yeah, maybe somebody can, because it's on the highway. There's a lot of places I've seen it, but that's on the highway. That's, you know, more unsightly. Thank you.
Any other public comment? Okay. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, we're adjourned.
Oh, Matt. Hey, Mark, did I understand it right? Does that mean I can take my grandkids over on that open space and we can ski down that hill? Absolutely. All right. Because we were told we weren't allowed to. We tried that one time. We got to watch that one hole of Lincoln.
They have the